Hello everyone, I'm Michaela Kathleen. Happy International Women's Day. Last year I did a series of videos for Women's History Month, celebrating all month long, and one of those videos was a list of feminist books that I wanted to read, although I really should have put as the goal purchase, because my TBR is so long that reading them within a year is a bit of a lofty goal for me. And so yeah, this year on International Women's Day, I wanted to kind of go over that list and see which books I got around purchasing. Spoiler alert, not a lot. Although with that being said, I did get around to some feminist reads that were not on that list. I bought The Grace Year this year. I read The First Girl Child. I'm currently reading Moxie. But yeah, for this video, I'm just looking at the books that were on that list. I had 12 books on that list. I had 4 nonfiction books, 4 poetry books, and 4 fiction books. And I did actually succeed in getting the first book that was on that list, which was Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay. This is an essay collection that I have not read yet, but now that it's on my TBR, now that I have it, I know I will read it someday, so I'm very excited for that. Roxane Gay is kind of a big name in the feminist world, and I first learned about her as a guest on kind of this special after talk show for the TV show Dietland that was on AMC a few years back. And I just found her very interesting and have been wanting to read something of hers ever since. So since I succeeded in getting this book, I want to replace it on my list and have a new book that I want to try to get this year and keep my list at 12 for nonfiction, for fiction, and for poetries. And so the book that I'm going to replace this one with is Know My Name by Chanel Miller, which is a memoir from a sexual assault survivor. Her story is pretty well known, you can go look it up, but apparently the book is just incredibly emotional and also incredibly intelligent. Apparently it draws a lot of similarities between the process that women go through in the court system and the process that Black people go through in the court system, which I don't know a lot about, so I'm interested to learn about that. But also this book just gets rave reviews. I believe it was one of Cindy's over on Read with Cindy, one of her favorite books this year, and so I'm sure it will be very emotional and hard-hitting. And then the other 3 nonfiction books that were on my list last year, I did not succeed in getting. The first one was Invisible Women, Data Bias in a World Made for Men by Caroline Criada Perez. And this is a book about kind of all the ways in which women are disadvantaged by the data bias in all kinds of studies. There is lots and lots of research being done out there that is only being done from the male perspective, and so there are many things that are being designed that aren't taking female needs in mind. The third book that was on my list was I Am Malala by Malala Yousafzai, who is a young woman who is a education rights activist for young girls. And she's just a super inspiring activist with an incredible story. And education is one of the issues that I tend to feel are very important, but I maybe don't know as much about it as I could, I feel like. And then the final book that was on my nonfiction list was Pro, Reclaiming Abortion Rights by Katha Pollitt, which, like education, is another incredibly important right. Luckily, I think we all feel a little bit safer in these various rights than we maybe did last year. So moving on to my poetry list from last year, the first book that was on that list was Shout by Lori Halse Anderson. As I said last year, I read Speak in high school, and it was one of the few books in high school that was assigned reading that I actually really enjoyed, and so I would be interested to read her poetry as well. The next book on the poetry list was Milk and Honey, which I really did intend to buy recently, actually. I had gift cards from Barnes & Noble for Christmas, and I went to Barnes & Noble with the intention of buying Milk and Honey with part of my gift card money. But at the time, they only had available a box set of Milk and Honey and The Sun and Her Flowers, and I was not prepared to spend that much of my gift card money. I had only wanted to get Milk and Honey, and if I enjoyed it, I probably then would have gotten The Sun and Her Flowers, but I didn't want to invest that much in poetry because I haven't really tried poetry yet. I'm intending to, but I haven't yet. And in the past, I haven't enjoyed poetry, so I kind of want to dip my toes in before investing too much into it. So yeah, that was my fail at trying to get Milk and Honey. Instead, I ended up getting a book that was not on this list, but is still poetry, so I'm picking this book up next, going to be finally giving poetry a bit of a try. And the book that I got for that was some selected poems of Emily Dickinson, which I will still, even if I don't enjoy this, I still want to give kind of modern feminist poetry a try. I feel like it's a little bit different of a style than these are going to be, but this was just a really pretty little poetry book that I could get. And I'm actually watching Dickinson over on Apple Plus right now, so I am excited for this one as well. The third book on my poetry list was The Princess Saves Herself in This One by Amanda Lovelace. Again, I am still just very intrigued by that title. And then the final book on my poetry list I did manage to purchase this year. It is actually a book just told in verse, so not just poems, a whole story, so kind of a different kind of poetry than some of the others on this list. And that is The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. It has such a pretty cover, and again, I've never read a book told in verse, so this will be my first one. So I'm hoping I like it and can continue to delve into this different way of relating a story. And since I got this book and it is no longer on the list, I'm going to replace it with another poetry book. So going on the list now, I would like to get a collection by Audre Lorde. This was a poet that was mentioned in Moxie that I am currently reading, so I'm interested to read some of her poetry now. So I'm adding her to the list. Moving on to my fiction list, I did not get a single book on this part of the list. So this part of the list will remain the same this year. And the first book on the fiction list was The Power by Naomi Alderman. And I've actually started to hear in the year since I put this on the list some kind of mixed reviews, but I'm gonna leave it on the list because I still find the concept to be pretty intriguing. It is a book in which women suddenly find that they have the power to inflict great pain or even death, which of course makes them suddenly have a lot more power in their day-to-day lives. So I think that's an interesting concept. Obviously, this isn't something that I would be wanting to go around doing in real life, but it, I think, could be a very cathartic read, and catharsis is kind of one of the big points of storytelling. The next book on the list was Beloved by Toni Morrison. Again, I've not read any Toni Morrison, so I would really like to give her a try. She has written so many classics, so I feel like she definitely belongs on this list. The third book on the list was Vox by Christina Delcher, and this is a dystopian novel in which women are limited to only saying, I believe, 100 words per day. So their freedoms have been massively restricted, and I feel like that makes for an interesting concept. It kind of has a Handmaid's Tale feel, but even taking it a step further. And the final book on the list was Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. And I have listened to her TED Talk, We Should All Be Feminists, and so I wanted to have her on the list, but try out some of her fiction rather than her nonfiction. So yeah, those were all of the books that were on the list of feminist books that I would like to read that I posted last year. I only purchased 2 out of the 12, so not doing so hot. But it's nice to have these goals to kind of remind you to be mindful of what you're purchasing and to just have a bit of a goal in mind. Let me know down below some of your favorite feminist reads. And to end today's video off with a quote, speaking of catharsis, I have a quote from Hannah Gadsby, and it goes, "Just remember, if you find yourself in the minority, you do not matter. That's just the rule of comedy. It's not my fault. Men wrote the rules. If you don't like it, blame them. That's what I do. It's cathartic." Thanks for watching. Remember, words matter.